So you probably get tired of me saying it, that this next sermon is so important. But I have to be honest and say the one we just finished on the 3rd of July really is an important thing for us to understand as we put our whole faith together, because the story of Adam and Eve is really fundamental to our core theology. And if we don't get that right, we miss out on a whole bunch. I have a lot to share, and I'm going to talk fast, so go back and watch it again if you missed something. But there's a lot to cover in that amazing message. And the first thing I talked about was to remember that oftentimes it's a little confusing when we hear things like, well, because of Adam and Eve's disobedience, all of humanity suffers separation from God's goodness and God's plan. And I talked about my own reluctance to accept that, the very idea that one or two people could do something wrong thousands of years ago and that affects all of us. That just seems horribly unfair. It wouldn't make sense in our judicial system. It wouldn't make sense in a classroom. So why on earth should you and I be punished for something Adam and Eve did that we had no control over? Probably it helps to think not so much in terms of punishment as in consequences. We suffer consequences as the whole human race because of the situation that we are in. Also talked about the fact that it's really more than just a pattern, although we can all see the influence of Adam and Eve in our own lives, and our own situations tend to mirror the things they experienced and did. That's really not the whole of it, because our core Christian teachings really say that there is a fundamental separation. There is a fundamental problem with humanity, and we have to come to terms with that. Honestly, I'm not asking you to agree with this, because many of you are very, very optimistic and you look at human beings as basically good and they just need to live up to their potential. And actually, we hear that in so many ways. But the truth is, the good news about Jesus does not really make much sense if you start with a baseline of human potential. Rather, we have to start with a baseline of the human condition and the human need. And the Adam and Eve story becomes the paradigm that really describes the whole mess that we are in as people, men and women, boys and girls, all of us. It's not one individual's misdeeds that causes a problem. It's the entire situation of humanity. Our core doctrine puts it this way in 3 important points. And these are pretty strong statements. Human nature, first of all, is very far gone from original righteousness and continually inclined to evil. So there's a fundamental evil and a fundamental issue of separation at the very heart of what it means to be a human being. The second thing, we cannot turn and prepare ourselves by our own natural strength and works to faith. In other words, this is a situation we cannot fix. It's not a try harder kind of thing. And in the third piece, and there's a word I'm going to explain in this, so pay attention. We have no power to do good works acceptable to God without the grace of God by Christ preventing us. Now, the confusing word is preventing, because in our day and time we use prevent to talk about keeping something from happening, but this is more like the Old English, where prevent is more like to precede or to go before, so that we don't have any power. God's power has to come first. It has to precede what we do. So getting things in the right order is really important in understanding the action of God. The New Testament talks about Adam and Eve and their sin in a couple of places. Let me share a couple of verses. Romans 5:18, one man's sin brought guilt to all people. In the same way, one right act made people right with God. That's the act of Christ's giving of himself. That one right act gave life to all people. And then in 1 Corinthians 15:22, because of Adam, all people die. Because of Christ, all will be made alive. So there's a pattern here that we are all connected to the sin of Adam, and that leaves us open to being connected to the powerful healing of Jesus. Now, there are a million questions you could come up with about Adam and Eve. We wonder, well, what would happen if they'd have never eaten the apple? Would they just still be hanging around there? Would everything be wonderful? Or would we be in the garden as a result? It also does seem a little unfair. Why do we suffer for the sin of 2 people? Why does that happen? But really, the bottom line you have to come down to, regardless of how you see this story, whether you see it more as historical or more as symbolic, really doesn't matter, because the point is it tells us and describes a situation of humanity there. And the question then you have to answer is, what do you believe about human nature? Honestly, Methodists tend to be pretty optimistic folks. We tend to look for the best in people. We don't tend to look down on people a whole lot. And because of that, we sometimes miss out on the point of Adam and Eve there, which is really talking about the fix that we are in. To understand the Christian gospel, you really have to come to terms with the fix that we are in. And so the problem is not just a little more education or a little more encouragement or a few more pats on the back. We have a fundamental flaw in our humanity that can only be changed by the power of God, by the grace of God. That also explains why there's so much evil in the world. Honestly, we should flip that question around. People always ask, well, why are there so many bad things in the world? Truly, we should be asking the question, why are there so many good things in the world? We know why evil is there. We need to understand where good comes from. And that's the reminder that God's power and God's Spirit are at work in mighty ways. And we simply need to line ourselves up with that there. Human condition is different than thinking about human potential. A good coach thinks a lot about human potential. He or she is always saying, you can do it. You've got what it takes. You can do it. Come on. You can make it. When it comes to our spiritual condition, though, a good mentor is going to look at you and say, you can't do it. You can't turn this one around on your own. You can't try hard enough to fix it. We need to have those words imprinted on our heart to realize that yielding, not doing, is the key here. As we understand the situation of Adam and Eve being our situation and the situation of all humanity, we realize then that we need help that we cannot provide on our own. That we are all in the same boat, that we are all in need of a hand and a helper to help us see the way out. Jesus himself once said, I have not come to call the righteous, I've come to call sinners. And in fact, he said, those who are well don't need a physician. It's those who are sick. And that's why Jesus is sometimes called the great physician. And so we're challenged then to realize our need. We don't need a physician if we're well, but if we understand our sickness and understand what we cannot heal on our own, then our hope is indeed for us. Keep working and keep seeking to understand how this fundamental Genesis story helps the entire rest of the story begin to make sense. The whole Jesus story, the whole fact that even though we are not in a garden without sin, but in fact, just like Adam and Eve, we are in a world of struggle. Nevertheless, we are not alone. The good news, the bottom line, is that God did not give up on people despite our fundamental flaw, despite our fundamental misdeeds, despite our fundamental sinful condition. God is there for us. He sent prophets, he sent leaders, he sent his Holy Spirit, he sent his Son, Jesus Christ. All of that is for us, his children.